It's the holiday season, and we're talking NLL, not Valentine's, but Ballantine, Ryan Ballantine. That's a terrible first impression since we just met. Welcome to the show, Roughnecks analyst. Happy to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Yes. Well, Ryan, as we're looking ahead at the Roughnecks game hosting the Warriors, what do you expect to see in terms of pace and just the physicality of this matchup?
Well, it's always physical when you see Sean Evans take the floor. He's one of the more physical offensive players in the league. So and he has a lot of history here in Calgary as well. But it's going to be really kind of a new look Roughnecks offense here with what we're seeing from Calgary, because of course Curtis Dixon moving to San Diego in the offseason, and the question's going to be here, who can score for the Roughnecks? When you look at the rest of their offense, you have a bunch of guys that are goal and a half per game, as opposed to those guys that you need to get several. So it's going to be a really interesting look. The Roughnecks have really tried to build this team from the back end to the front, drafting a lot of defenders and growing their transition game. So we'll see what they're able to do here on the other side of the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. As you talk about still figuring out the pieces, we've been talking about Zach Currier with that #1 ranking in IL Indoor. There's a lot to be said about the talent he brings, but what about the players around him? Who else is going to be able to fit into those pieces? But on the other side, the Warriors, another team that's still trying to figure things out as well, and looking to make some changes from last week's loss, but also just from last season in general. What do you anticipate that we're going to see from the Warriors and how they come into this game against Calgary?
Well, I expect we'll certainly see more goals than they scored last week. I think adding Evans into the lineup does wonders for your numbers. The guy's just produced points at a high level for his entire career. So I expect them to score a little more than they did last week. And it's been an interesting battle for the Warriors, despite kind of BC being this hotbed of lacrosse. It just hasn't translated to the professional ranks. Season after season after season, you keep hearing this is the year that Vancouver will take this step. This is the year that Vancouver will make something happen. And it just never seems to click. And I'm not sure what it is about the Vancouver area, but they've struggled mightily for many, many years now. And hopefully getting a former MVP like Sean Evans can help them start to win some games out there.
Yeah, I thought I was the only one that felt like it's the same narrative year after year of whether it's injuries or just needing that extra piece or being right there of turning that corner, but not having it happen. So the Warriors still trying to figure things out, but that's something we've talked about season after season. Well, something else that I did mention, and I do want to get your thoughts on, curious to know if there's been any talk from the guys from the city around that #1 ranking that Zach Currier got. It's week 2 that we're heading into, but we love being able to break down and overanalyze every little thing. What have you been hearing on your end in terms of that #1 ranking that Zach Currier received by IL Indoor?
Well, because we had the bye week last week, haven't had an opportunity to kind of get in with the guys yet. But I imagine that there will be kind of two faces to this. I imagine in public, a lot of the guys will be in front of the media saying, well, yeah, of course he's the #1 player. He caused 62 turnovers last year. He vacuumed up 265 loose balls. When you watch his breakaway speed in person, it is remarkable. There are times where he will start kind of shifting around a defender in his own end, and by the time he gets to the goalie, he's got 3 or 4 steps, and that's a lot over 200 feet. This is not something that the guy's running a whole football field. Over the course of a lacrosse, an indoor lacrosse, he's building up 3 steps of separation from defenders. So it's really remarkable to watch him go. I also imagine that there might be a fair amount of ribbing internally between the guys when, they're a #1, you're a #1 player ranked by IL Indoor. Well, if you go on that breakaway and you don't score, what do they say when you get back to the bench? There might be, some healthy kind of weight of expectations put on Zach Currier by some of his teammates, probably obviously in a friendly way, but I imagine that he might have that kind of tossed in his direction, not only from his teammates, but also his opponents. over the course of the year. When you carry that weight, you have to understand that guys are going to chirp you for it.
That's such a great point. And he is so dangerous in the open field. And now when you add that, he's already on scouting reports and the discussion for players to lock in on. And then you add in a nice #1 ranking. Yeah, it's like MVPs, champions, top rankings, all of those things add that extra bullseye on your back that as teams are facing you, they're like, hey, you're supposed to be the #1 guy. You can handle it. Well, I would love to get some hot takes, and I think it's always so great to hear, especially since, as you talk about, this is game #1 for Calgary. So I'm so curious to know. Again, it's week 2, but game 1. Curious to know, what do you expect in terms of surprises that maybe others aren't seeing right now that you think is going to pan out for Calgary? What is it that this team is going to bring to the league this season that you're anticipating looking ahead?
I think what might happen here in Calgary is some breakouts, and Calgary's going to need them. Let's not pretend that they don't. But you had Tyler Pace had a career year last year in goals per game. You had Zach Haywire, playing a career high in games and getting a career high in goals. Jesse King set career highs in goals and assists. So are these guys able to take the next step and be that next generation of Roughnecks offensive players now that you've seen over successive seasons, now 3 seasons in a row? You see Jeff Shatler, then Dane Doby, then Curtis Dixon all move on to other teams. And so are you going to be able to see these guys take the next step up? I'd like to think with more opportunity comes more offense. And now that the ball won't be funneled through Curtis Dixon on every possession, you might see a more spread out, varied attack from the Roughnecks offense. So I think the big story here will be the Roughnecks offensive breakout and guys continuing to take these steps in their career.
Yeah, it's definitely a different looking Calgary team than a few years back. But as you mentioned, could be a dangerous thing and an exciting thing of guys figuring out their roles, working their way into the mix, more offensively spacing and just moving the ball and being a team that's able to take that next step. So that's your prediction. I'm hoping and excited to see how that pans out. And I'm also looking forward to this game as the Roughnecks get started against the Warriors. And thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us on the show and being able to weigh in on what's going on in Calgary and sharing your thoughts.
Pleasure to be here. Happy to come back anytime.
Absolutely. We will hold you to that. And I'll give you a much better intro than Valentine's Ballantine.
Oh, I mean, 43 years old, 43 years of hearing it. So.
Yeah. I'm going to be more creative next time. You wait.
All right.